Standard deviation.
Hello, Simo.
Hello, Juliana. How are you?
I'm great. I haven't seen you since
At
1 minute
least,
ago.
yeah,
We're just nonstop. Like for people thinking we're not doing our jobs here, we're here recording. We're in the studio every single day, just trying to get this,
yeah.
interviews with
We've got
the.
like 4 years of episodes recorded by now.
I swear, we already have it set it up until summer.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, today we're gonna go to more, Simo. Like I think we're gonna go today to more like grounded type of topics with
Hmm.
G4, with the G4 implementation,
The gift
every,
that keeps on giving.
the
Like
gift that
whenever we need something to talk about, this is a GA4 consent mode. Like we could just because we can rant about those but at some point our listeners are going to grow tired of it, but not yet. I don't think not yet.
not yet. They still need, some of this stuff to be broken down into more digestible, like probiotics. You need
Yeah.
probiotics for G4.
So I'm going to I'm going to a really lovely conference tomorrow in Munich. It's the SMX Munich conference, which is like for anybody listening, if you're looking for a good just digital marketing conference, it's one of the best. It's yearly, typically March. It's search focused because it's SMX, but it just has lots of tracks for social, for AI, for developers, for analytics. So I've been going for there a number of years. Now it's been I think it's been a couple of years since I've last been, partly due to COVID and because of scheduling problems. And I'm going to be talking about server side tagging again because that's the only thing I'm qualified to talk about anymore these days. And I'm a bit worried that the because it's been a while, I'm a bit worried that the talk will just degenerate into general GA4 and concept mode discussion because that's almost certainly what's going to happen if somebody from like an analytics side comes to a search conference or a digital marketing conference that might not be like that deep into the analytics side of things. So I'm a bit worried that it's going to do bad things for my mental health, but we'll see. I'm looking forward to it, but well,
You're
by
gonna
the
see
time this
Jen,
airs,
right? Because
yeah,
she's
yeah,
coming.
Jane Kunz is going to be there, so we're hopefully going to have time to catch a coffee. But it's my typical conference itinerary. I fly in the morning. I'll be there a couple of hours, do my talk, and then I come back home to Finland. So it's
I
going to
learned
be
that
a
from you. I
yeah,
love
it's
that.
going to be a tough day, but it's always worth it. So there are a handful of conferences I would do that for, and SMX Munich is one of them. It's such a lovely event. So anyway, I was just saying that I'm kind of worried that our industry and what people think about our industry currently is all about GA4 and all about concept mode. And I know that this is a very shallow view, but if you look at like the short tail of what people are talking about online, that those are the two topics,
It's true.
which is very very unfortunate because there's so much more to talk about than just those things.
I know, and I see also search conferences, as you said, they're like more interested to bring like digital analytics and digital marketing. And I'm also speaking at the search conference for the first time in my life. I'm speaking at SERP Conf in
Mm.
Bulgaria. Very excited because it's close to home, and so I can do the same thing as you, just go in and come back in the same day. I love it. Not that I don't like to, do the networking and stuff, but I just miss my kids. I think it's the
Mm.
same for you.
Yep.
And initially, they were asking me to do a panel about GA4, which I very much passed on because I cannot do another panel about GA4. But we're gonna talk about different things like natural language processing and search
Yeah.
console and stuff like that. But also, like I see this interest, and it's just related to GA4 and consent
Yeah.
mode, as you said. And it's sad because there's a lot of stuff that happen in this industry right now that just pass unnoticed. They
Mm.
just like they don't get enough attention. And remember, we were talking a bit before we started recording about iOS 17.4 that it's coming, and they're gonna release 600 APIs, more than 600 APIs for browser engines. And you mentioned like this was something that it was being talked a lot, right?
Well, I mean, the biggest gripe of browser engineers who see iOS as a huge market is that they have to use WebKit.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they basically every single browser app, well, not every single one, but all those that want to actually operate efficiently and use the App Store are just wrappers for Apple's technology, and they need to kind of. So when you think about Chrome, for example, which has been like severely lagging behind in the privacy game, like they haven't, third party cookies are still available, and referrer truncation came at a delay, and like all these features that you expect, and storage partition, it all comes with a delay. On iOS, they've been doing it because they've had to do it. They've had to use WebKit, so they've had these protections on. But obviously, it's not a uh, it's not a Apple is all about control. They want, when you open the iPhone, when you open the iPad, they want the experience to always be predictable. Like they
yeah.
don't want a random jailbreaked app to kind of destroy what people think about when they think about iOS, which is like elegance and speed. If you, well, some of you might not agree with that, but that's kind of the design aesthetic.
Yeah.
But now with these European laws and legislations, Digital Markets Act, Digital Services Act, they have to open
The
the operating
floodgates.
system. Yeah, they have to. They have to. Like it's otherwise it's an antitrust thing. They have to be able to allow other engines in there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that happens.
I'm actually excited about this, especially
Yeah,
for progressive web apps or hybrid apps, and
yeah,
it's going to be very interesting and also very hard for poor developers that need to refigure everything out. And
yeah,
then we always, like especially people in experimentation. Yeah, I'm talking about you guys that come up with the, oh, like, let's do this A/B test right now. It's like, no, like, no, it's
yeah.
not gonna happen. It's, I think also Apple is not having, there's not full form for Apple in the last weeks because of, you remember the Spotify thing where they
Mm,
were sued, and like now they were actually fined for, I mean, it's not too much money for Apple, but they were fined. Like it's not good to be Apple in the last weeks. I wouldn't want to be them, but it's definitely something interesting that's going on. And as you said, I'm very excited to see how it's gonna,
yeah,
develop. And yeah, like back to the topic of today, because we have an amazing guest that actually is a trainer and a consultant for GA4 and BigQuery. Like, like, I'm really excited to see and learn from her, because I know she's doing a lot of trainings with agencies and trainings with different companies. Like, where are the struggles that people have with GA4? What are like the questions? Like, it's so, like, I think in social media the content that we have is very much curated from our POVs as content creators, but it's, you don't see too many opinions of actually client side people, like people that actually have to work with the tool and deal with it every day. Don't you think that?
yeah. I do, and I don't know. There's also this echo chamber thing that I really dislike when it comes to GA. Like it's I don't know.
Go
We
ahead,
we
go
should we should have
say it.
rethunk. We should have
Say
had a rule in this season that we don't talk about GA4 at all. But
first and last episode of J4 this season, people. So
it's
watch it
such a
while it
it's
lasts.
yeah it's such an interesting topic from
Interesting,
so
yes.
many, like from so many perspectives, and but it also speaks volumes about our industry, and the people in our industry, that they also can't talk about anything else. Like there's nothing in the world is forcing you to use that tool, like absolutely
Nobody.
nothing. um, uh, so yeah, I
No,
don't
but
know.
it's kind of like the content is very gate kept
Mm,
by the people that, like, don't get us wrong, we're happy for people to create content. Like, I love seeing content creators doing their thing and so on, but the perspective on the content is very much from the content creator perspective that talks about this and wants to get, of course, just like everyone else, just like me, I'm trying to get attention, I'm trying to get, like, new people to follow and digest my content, but it has to be some sort of objectivity in this, because
mm.
otherwise we're just gonna, like, circle jerk each other. I hope that is that a safe word, Simo? Circle jerk.
I don't know. It's just the mental images are horrendous.
I don't. I have nothing. I have nothing. But yeah,
Yeah,
no, like, what I'm excited about our guest today is that we're gonna talk a bit more about the perspective of somebody that actually works with client side and trains
yeah,
people. So I'm sure she has a lot of insights on what people are actually struggling with. And as you said, like, I do hate the fact that it's kind of like, it looks like it's forced, but it's not. Nobody forces nobody. Like,
yeah,
We need heroes. We need people to talk about something else. Like take
Yeah,
this
but it's
podcast as an inspiration. Talk about something else.
yeah, but it is difficult because then there's the the balance of power is kind of weird because you have customers who have a lot of ad spend and who have been using analytics tools like Google's analytics tools,
Yeah.
for decades at this point. And so now they have no other option basically. That's how they see it. So it's and then there's the agency model because I don't think that agencies themselves, I think, this is a gold mine for them. It's a problematic tool that everybody needs to use, or that's the kind of, what people what the vendors want you to think is that everybody needs to use these. So of course agencies are in a great position now because they can just sell fixing. They can sell like, let's get you up to speed packages, let's do this migration, let's do this gap analysis or whatever. And there are so many vague things about these platforms that you can just create problems and solve them and ask for money in return. Like this is a beautiful time to be working with with customers and helping solve their problems because there's so many problems that you can create by yourself without anybody noticing them. It's so that I think is a problem. But on the other hand, if everybody accepts that that's how the game is played, then all the power to them. That's, I think, part of the agency model has always been to kind of isolate yourself, for agencies to isolate themselves from the actual reality of the company and just kind of create a problem that they need to solve so that they can sell their wares. I think that's a
It's
perfectly viable way of doing business if the customer understands what they're buying.
And it's classic marketing, like problem
Yeah.
awareness. You have to make people aware of problems that they don't even have. But
Yep.
that's what it is. But also what I don't like, and I'm taking full responsibility for this. I don't It's gonna be spicy. What I don't like is that the whole constellation with Google Ads and GA4 and consent is forcing kind of the hand of people that spend so much money in advertising to stay within the ecosystem because of Google Ads, because of paid search, because of DV360, and because of consent mode V2. Because, like, let's say if people would want to transition to other analytics tools, they will never have the direct integration that Google has naturally with Google Ads. So
Do
it's
you think that's enough? Like, do you think that's enough to keep you using GA4?
I've
Because
seen
you
a
you
lot
still
of
have the
objective.
information in ads, like you can still see impressions. Like, you just can't correlate that with like other on-site behavior.
That's what I've got as an objection because I do
Yeah,
recommend other analytics tools. Obviously, not to everyone, but if it fits the shoe,
yeah.
why not? Like, uh, I'm not gonna name names, but I have preferences, and so when I see fit, I suggest other things. And
Mm.
the biggest objection that I've dealt with is the fact that the advertising data, it will not be in the same constellation of everything else with the user behavior, so they cannot easily stitch things together. Because all of these other analytics tools have integrations with search, with Google Ads and everything else, but it's not in the same it's not in the same ecosystem. So bigger brands do they either want to stay because of this, or they just want to remove themselves completely from Google, which is interesting. And it's kind of a behavior that I see getting a bit more of an adoption. I see people transitioning to Adobe a lot in the
Oh yeah,
last period. So as we talked with Charles, if you remember last year, I think that classic competition between Adobe and Google will it's starting to pick up in a way.
no,
Yeah, interesting times. But I do think that Google Ads thing and the consent movie too is kind of what was the, how do you call this in English? The mousetrap
yeah.
that kept.
Well, I have to say, like, if to all the listeners out there, if the Google Ads integration is the only thing that's keeping you tied to GA4, and now I'm gonna like you, I think GA4 has a time and a place in companies as well. Like it's not abandonware.
Yeah,
It's totally fine for many use cases. But if ads integration is the only reason why you're putting yourself through the headache of configuring that tool, then I think you need a better consultant around you. Like you need better people around you to tell you that that's not necessary. because you can get the same kind of info. Like it won't be as pretty, it won't be as smooth, but there are ways to get that information. There are ways to correlate the click IDs with campaigns and then join that together in the back end. And there are, manually tagging those URLs so you see the campaign names in the UTMs, whatever. There are ways to solve this. Like GA4 is absolutely not a requirement for doing ads well, and ads is not a requirement for using GA4. So I just want to put that out there in case you need that confirmation from someone who's been doing this stuff. Um,
I think that's very powerful and important for a lot of people to know. And I
quite the
think
power.
no, but seriously, this is an article that I would love to see from you because there
Oh,
is a lot of confusion on this topic.
I can tell you with all confidence that I will never, ever,
You'll never
ever
do
write an
it.
article about ads. Like this is not going to happen. I don't think it's. I'm pretty sure I've never done it, but I'm also absolutely sure that I'm never going to do it.
But
No,
no, it's
no.
good that you
It's easier
convinced.
to just rant.
I know, but it's something that is happening right now, and I think with the DMA and consent mode V2, this is what kind of like culminated. This is me being spicy. I'm spicy this month. I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe I should shut up and
No, no, no.
put you in an
It's good.
embarrassing position to do that.
Oh, okay. Yes, yes. So we are Simmer. We are an online course platform. As also, we are authors of a technical marketing handbook. We are owners of a website. We are also video studio renters. So we do a lot of stuff. We are also jack of all trades. But yeah, in all seriousness, Simmer, which sponsors this podcast, we do online courses around technical marketing. And if you're interested, take a look at teamsimmer.com. We have a discount code called Deviate, that's DEVIATE, for 10% off individual course purchases. And we've just released the Technical Marketing Handbook, which is a free resource. Um, Basically, if you've been listening to these weird, unhinged rants on this podcast, it's like that, but in book format. So feel free to take a look and kind of get up to speed on what technical marketing actually is, because we haven't been able to define it properly yet. And maybe that book doesn't do it either, but yeah.
Come on, don't say you guys are doing everything. It's a different thing. Technical marketing,
No,
you're
I was
supposed to know.
completely yeah. No, no, I was
Yeah,
being
like you're
completely
supposed
sarcastic.
to
We
know.
are doing one single thing, and that's the online courses. But yeah,
What
I've been told that I need to have a more positive note about, like, that I'm just like walking through the motions here. So I'll try to be more excited about Simmer, which is really just a
you
lovely
should
company.
be
I
more.
wouldn't be wearing the shirt otherwise. It's really just such a great thing we've been working on. I'm really proud of it. So if you're interested in technical marketing courses, this is me saying that take a look at Simmer, teamsimmer.com.
I told you need to convince Mari to do this.
Yeah, I do. This is like this is just, the quality is just degrading every single time. It's getting worse and worse,
we,
to the
we,
point where I think this is the time when the listeners go and grab a cup of water or something, or just turn the podcast off and keep running.
I'm gonna put it at the beginning then. So,
Yeah, you can just mute it. I think even 5 minutes of silence would be better than this. Yeah, I
stop.
have to just fix it.
Cool, cool, cool. Well, we're gonna talk with our guest Jill quick about actually training and digital marketing, and we're gonna talk a bit about J4. We're gonna talk a bit about BigQuery, and see where she's at because she's in a very, I guess, different space than us. In a way, she kind of like did her own thing, kind of like moved away from the traditional agency model, traditional consulting model, and she's doing her own thing. And I love her website so much. It's probably one of the best polished websites I've seen for a consultant. Like she makes us all look bad. So except Julian.
Yay, we have Jill Hick here in the house. How are you? Welcome.
Yeah, a little round of applause. That's nice.
Yes, it's like the magic of cinema.
Because
I have been told that I'm not allowed to, that there's many other sounds here too, and depending on how this interview progresses, I will have to maybe get some of those out. But yeah, I
yeah.
should not be using a soundboard anymore.
I like it.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, Jill. For anyone that does not know Jill, she's an analytics consultant and a trainer at the coloring department, and she has probably one of the best consultant websites I've seen in my life, and very untypical of analytics people. Not saying that we're all boring, but hers is
most
definitely
of us are.
most of us are boring. Yeah, your website is not boring. I'm actually excited because it's so colorful and happy and very, very unrelated to the reality of digital analytics today. But welcome.
Thank you.
But what's the story behind what's the story behind the website, and what's the story behind your visual brand? Because you have such a cartoony,
Yeah.
beautifully
So
vibrant.
I guess it starts with my journey just into marketing in general. So I have been in the marketing industry for a very long time. And I think it didn't matter when I was working for a large company or a small company, anything that we did in marketing, whether it was a website, SEO, email, PPC, there was always this slur that was phrased at marketing. And it happened in more than one company where they're like, oh, that's Jill and her team, and they're just playing around with their crayons. It's marketing. They just take the revenue and they make things look pretty. And I kind of just sat there and thought, hang on a second, we do more than that. Like, we do provide value, we do provide revenue for the business. And when I was thinking of ideas for um, switching things up from my consultancy before I went out on my own, the colouring in department was almost like a sticking your fingers up to go, well, let's just own the phrase. If you think we are the colouring in department, then fine. But I also believe that when you teach people or you work with people on projects, it doesn't have to be boring, but you do have to keep people engaged. So the approach of the colors and the cartoons, I think, is coming from a marketing background, but also just trying to make it feel a bit more fun. I always try and put myself in the shoes to go, if I was learning this, if I was teaching this, and I was the person on the other end of the table, how would I like to learn? How would I like to be spoken to? And I didn't want to sit through documentation that's written by developers because it didn't link, if that makes sense. And it's a bit fun. Like I do lots of pictures, and there's a lovely lady that does my artwork for me. I have to pose in the positions and then she
Oh,
colours me
really?
in.
Wow.
Loads of fun. Like, I
Yeah.
love it. Like, it's just,
That's
I
all.
think you work for yourself as well. You don't have to take yourself so seriously. Like, it's
Yeah.
not that deep. Do you know what I mean?
That's so cool. So it's like typical when you've built a user interface for your brand. Like you have a
Yeah.
visual style, and you have a certain way of. And do you think that when people contact you, do they mention this stuff? Do they say that this is the thing that like caught our eye? Is that common in your?
Not always, but post training, they all say, oh, I enjoyed that more than I thought I would, or I thought this was going to be a really dull day. And actually, it was quite entertaining. And I thought, yeah, that's quite good. And I think because I'm neurodivergent as well, my brain kind of goes this way as well when I'm learning. Yeah, spicy brains unite. It kind of helps to blend all that creativity. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'll have the opposite effect. I'm sure that there might be people that have been on the website and it isn't corporate enough, but then I'm not the right person to work with you then. It's all about finding a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good way to filter out the ones that you don't want to align with your brainwaves.
If you don't like this, then we're not going to work very well together.
That's really good. That's really good.
I love that.
Yeah.
But how did you get into training? Like, what culminated to the point? Like, of you did digital marketing, analytics, and so on. But then I noticed that you're doing a lot of trainings for client side. So I do have questions with this because, like, I'm really curious. Like, what client side makes of all this going on right now with J4? But before that, just tell us, how did you, like, what was the transition to that?
Yeah. So I think when I look back at my career, when I worked for my first job in London was a company called GLL, and then I moved on to a hospitality chain, and I had team members, and we always did like lunch and learn kind of things without knowing that there were a lunch and learn. It was just something to put together, and I always tried to build on my skill set. So if you would have seen me talk or deliver any training 10, 15 years ago, it's nowhere near the quality that it is now. Because when you're first starting out, you've just got to get
Mm.
started, haven't you? We all start at zero. And I really enjoyed the feeling of transferring knowledge, but then it also flipped back to me. I would learn something from the people that I was
Mm.
engaging with, which was also really important to keep your skills good. And I volunteered a lot because some of the jobs that I was working in we didn't do all the marketing that I wanted to do. So I was like, well, how do I build my skill set if the job I've got is a charity and we don't have a big budget? What can I do to hone those skills in? So and this is pre-children, so you can do this when you don't have other responsibilities, and I didn't at the time. So I did lots of volunteering and started doing a little bit of public speaking. And I still am nervous when I do it, but it was a way to kind of hone my skills. And then I started a second postgrad with the Institute of Digital Marketing. And I'm a right geek, and I got a distinction on my exam. And I was like, oh, go me. And my tutor at the time said, would you like to come to the IDM and do a workshop on revision techniques, because you've been through the program? It would be nice to get some real world experience. So I did that, and then that led for them to say, well, would you like to be down as like a reserve lecturer, and then if somebody's sick, then you can cover. And then somebody was sick and I covered, and then that led to another one. And then as soon as I put it on LinkedIn that I was doing some work for them, other training companies then reached out to me. And then I started doing a lot of work with General Assembly. So I was teaching a 10-week digital marketing program. I did a number of workshops. Analytics was always the anchor in all of them. It was my strongest point. And it just kind of propelled and snowballed. And after that, I would get people contacting me directly to say, we can see that you're doing training for these other companies. How about you coming in-house and doing something for the team that might be a bit more bespoke than an off-the-shelf program that you could get from an institution? And that's kind of how it evolved. And it's been a lovely journey, but not, I think a lot of people have this with their career, don't they? It's not what I thought I would be doing when I first started out, but I like the idea that treat every conversation as an opportunity. You don't know where it's going to lead and what avenues it might bring. And sometimes things don't happen for a long time, but it's all these little connections. And if you don't network and have conversations, then it doesn't happen. So yeah, they've all been happy accidents from being quite open about having chats and cups of
So,
tea.
do you approach these like bespoke trainings where you have a brief, like we have these kinds of needs, can you do that training? Is there a different approach to that than working as a consultant for them on a project? Like, do you?
Yeah. So I have a process that I work with, and shamelessly plugging that I'm doing a webinar with the lovely Dana de Tomaso next week, I think it is, all on scope surveys, because one thing that was a really positive experience from working with large established training organizations is you learn instructional design and you learn how to build lesson plans and what the learning objectives are, and then breaking it all down. I'm sure, Simo, with all the stuff you do with Team Simmer, you're familiar with this, breaking down the modules and what you're going to cover and how you're going to show that you've achieved that learning objective. But before we get to that part, I have a load of questions that I filter out, because people don't know what they don't know. And I've always said with analytics, whether it's consulting or training, it's never proactive. It's always a reaction to a problem that's happened, which is they're looking at the data and somebody somewhere is either questioning it, or they don't trust it, or they know it's flat out wrong, like the numbers have fallen off a cliff. And then they reach out and go, oh, I've got a problem, or we've got to do a report and we don't know what we're doing. It's never oh, this year we're all going to proactively skill up on this. We're like bottom of the pile of training. So I normally get a question of, we know we need to skill up, but we don't know what we don't know. So if I was to rely purely on a client or somebody that I'm working with to tell me what that learning journey is going to look like, the training program would probably fall flat on its face and nobody would be happy. So some of the questions that I ask start with, what is your confidence and understanding of GA4 from a scale of 1 to 10? And then I'm putting it in like a scatter plot and working out where people are in the team. So we can go back to the client and say, there's 20 people that we're going to be training. Most are between a 1 to 3. So you might think you want to learn about measurement protocol, but actually we need to start with the foundational elements and then move it up. We can then work out who is going to be going on those training elements, because some people might be able to skip it or they might go to other elements. And then I work through questions around what don't they trust and why don't they trust it, because that can help me. We know from our work where the pain points are and what settings they need to know about to get that quality of data. And then I dig into the personal questions around what is it that you need data for? Because I've definitely seen a theme from the digital analytics conference in Amsterdam that I attended recently and at Super Week. There were a lot of conversations around how do you show the value from data? If we just say, here's a report, marketing did stuff, then what are
Yeah.
we doing? Like, is it anybody could make those charts up essentially? So, what are the metrics that people are personally benchmarked against? Because then they care about that, right? They don't care about the business objectives. They immediately care about their own work, their own reviews, their own purchase orders, their own bonuses. Then you've got the teams departments and then the company's departments. And it's picking those out to work out what's important to these people. And then another question I like is, what data or what reports would you love to have, but you have no idea how to get them? And that brings me questions like, oh, I've been doing loads of SEO and I can't prove that it's working. And I'm like, cool, I could show you how to build some audiences for people that go on those pages and after half an hour convert. And they're like, yeah, do that. Like, yeah, we want that. Or we don't know how long it takes people to complete the customer journey. Cool, let's talk about Explore and what you could be doing and building it from there. So the end of the scope survey, whether it's training, there's a different set of questions. I then present back my findings to either validate what the person that has inquired to me about and say, you said you wanted this, you were right, you were nearly there, actually it's something completely different. And then we can work on the plan from that. And whether it's consulting, different set of questions, but a similar tone where I'm trying to ask lots of qualitative questions to really understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve and where can we show value. Because with GA4, there's still a lot of people that just went with UA until it was set on fire. And then they're now logging in. And I mean, it's nearly 4 years, isn't it? And I'm like, did you not start? They're like, nope, we thought it was going to be pushed back. So we didn't learn it. We've not looked at it. And now they're going, oh, I can't build my reports anymore. And you've got to work out, well, what do you need? And how deep do I need to go? And that's generally been the best approach for me. Instead of me saying, I think you should have this program, it never works. Just like the default settings never work in GA, a default training program will never work for everybody. You have to adapt it. And it's just getting that balance.
That's a, so that's a lovely approach, because I think that we were just talking before you came on. We were talking about how this is a great time to be an agency, because these are tools that are so complex that there's so many ways to find new problems to solve and sell those solutions. But if your cooperation models rely solely around existing problems that need solving, then the amount of value you can add is infinite, right? So if you go and try to find the root causes, why are you asking these questions in the first place? Like, how does your organization support these processes? Then you have a
Yeah.
better chance of kind of injecting yourself as a trusted partner, more than just like a problem
And
solver
they
or
get
someone
what
to.
they need at the time that they need it. So we always talk about the data maturity of a company.
Yeah.
And I've had this very recently with a company that had a huge digital footprint, and they had Power BI, and they had like 15 people in their data team, and they had 180 odd GA4 properties. Like, it was a monster budget that they had for their data, and their digital maturity and their data maturity was very, very high. When we did this scope survey, it showed that the data maturity of the people accessing the data
Yeah.
was very low. And that's where you get this disconnect, right? Where somebody will go, well, I've given you the data. It's now for marketing to work out how to use it. And they're
Yeah.
going, what have you just given me? It's like, I've gone into, when you have kids, when they go into those like toys and there's just lights everywhere and they're just like pressing buttons. It's like
Mm.
that. They're like, I don't actually know what these buttons do. I don't know how it works. But then the people that are really into the data aren't marketeers, so they can't give the creative solutions because that's not part of their skill set.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think that I'm the in-between person, that I understand enough to be dangerous on the data side, but I've come from a place of marketing. that
Yeah.
I know what you could do with the tools and how you could benefit from it. And then people, hopefully, I mean, there might be people now that go, I did Jill's training and it was crap. But hopefully they'll say, no, I got something out of it because it was linked to what their pain
Yeah.
point was, because we took the time to ask. And there are times when, you know, I'm doing it and I go, I could just wing it and not do this, but I'd rather put the time in, because it can take,
Yeah.
you know, the minimum about 4 to 6 hours for me to get this. And if it's a really big engagement, it's a couple of days for me to work it
Yeah.
out. But it does make the putting together of the training faster. It means when I'm doing my GA consulting, that's faster because I'm focusing on what matters and I don't go down a checklist that's of no value to them or go down a rabbit hole that isn't going to produce anything that they're ever going to implement. So it's a trade-off, but I don't think everybody approaches it that way, which is interesting. Be interesting to hear how you approach it when you do it. Do you do like the scopy surveys, or do you have a process that you work with as well?
Well, like I'm the worst example of anybody with even a shred of method in their daily life. So I'm absolutely a bad example at it. But I do have opinions which I'm always happy to share. Like in this case, for example, I think it's like, again, from a consultancy point of view, it can be both like thrilling and demoralizing at the same time. If you find out, for example, in your example, you find out that there's a company that has a great data engineering setup. Like the data just is, the quality is verified with contracts. You know, there's integrations are done well. There are backups. It's compliant, everything. And you're really happy for them because you are a data geek as well. But
Yeah,
then you find out that the actual end users and the interfaces in the company where the data
don't
is
you? Yeah,
required are just broken down. And I think that's just symptomatic of the fact that the company has grown their data processes like one silo at a time, one problem at a time. They started off by saying, "Hey, like our data quality is crap, so we need more engineers." Then they hire more engineers and they fix that. Then they find out that, hey, by the way, our marketing department isn't using this data, so then they hire more marketeers and fix their systems. When they could have gotten so much better off if they had immediately noticed that our problem isn't system based, it's like communication based. We
yeah,
lack these interfaces in the company for data to communicate just as well as the people do. And I think
yeah,
that
yeah.
for a consultant, it could be so tempting to just play to that silo game because that's the absolute easiest way. You know, I'll help you fix some of your remaining data problems and get my paycheck and or my bill, and that's fine. But if you go into the company and say that, hey, your problem is cultural, like it's not something we can fix in a single training, or it's not something you can just install a tool for, the discussion is going to be so much more difficult. But if you do your job really well, you can get like a lifetime deal out of it in a way. You can be their trusted partner and their
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
organization whisperer in a way.
And I'd probably say 90% of my work from 12 years of being my own boss is referral based. It's people that move companies and they go, we work with Jill, we'll bring her in the new company. Or it's people that are having a chat in their own circles and they go, we worked with this person, let me I pass it along. And I'd like to think that the strength of that is because of
Yeah.
the value that I brought to that project. I mean, I did have one person that was like, no, I just want you to just do this one thing. And I was like, really? Please let me help.
Yeah.
Please let me help. And not everybody wants to work through that process, which
Yeah.
is fine. Not everybody answers all the questions, which is also fine. But at
Yeah.
least you've got some evidence then that if there's a group of people that went through the scope survey and put, you know, no, yes answers, and yet when you get to the end of it and you show what you presented, if they kick off, they go, you were consulted, we did bring you into the conversation, but I'm not psychic. So if you don't tell me what your issues were and what you wanted, then we don't necessarily prioritize them. And I will also say that doing the scope surveys, I always ask them to send it to anybody that is impacted by data collection or anybody that touches a report. And by doing that, and I had a good example of this about 2 weeks ago. So I'm working with a new client, and obviously the stakeholder that engaged me, they're doing the survey and their team's doing the survey. And I might know, send it to anybody that's doing this. You've got a CRO agency, send it to them. You've got a PPC agency, send it to them. Who gets the reports at a more senior level? We'll give them a lighter one just because I want to understand how I could maybe visualize the data better for them, because they don't need all the nitty gritty, weedy dashboards that we produce. And we kind of expand on that. And what happens is I find that silo culture thing. There was the team that hired me when I said, one question is, are you planning on changing your technology stack in the next 12 to 18 months? Everybody was like, nope, we're all good. And then one other department went, yes, we plan on replatforming the e-commerce in about
Oh,
10 months' time. And I'm
that's
like,
juicy.
that's useful information to know, because I don't want to start rebuilding stuff and then find out from you updating the team in the summer that, by the way, we're going to have to redo all of this work.
Yeah.
That's useful information to know. And it also helps to spread the budget, because when you get to the implementation side of it, and marketing are going, oh, like sometimes the list is quite long, right? That they need quite a few things to fix or a few things to focus on. But if you were to bring it in and say, well, actually, the business development and product team would benefit from these reports. So you could, in theory, take 10% from their budget because they're going to get this report in the end. And that kind of helps sometimes massage work through and allocates the budget from different departments, because they were also involved and can see the value in the data that they're going to be getting. Because I genuinely believe that there are things that we can do with GA4 and obviously other performance tools of choice that can help you make smarter decisions with your data if you've got access to the right thing at the right time. And when they can see that there's value there, then people will give you some money for it or some resources for it.
Yeah.
And that's been really good. And I probably only pushed that about 2 years ago. And it's one of those things where you go, I wish I'd have pushed it earlier, because it would have made some projects go a little bit smoother.
Yeah. I do have another question based on what you told me. A lot of our listeners are freelancing, right? They're like their own bosses, they're entrepreneurs, analysts, trainers as well. Obviously not like you, and I take responsibility for it. But I think one of the questions that always comes, and I'm really curious to hear your answer on this, is like, how do you keep on going? How do you get motivated? Because there's so much competition in digital analytics right now. Like, how do you keep on going? How does somebody from, I don't know, Latin America that does this right now, like, how do they find things to inspire them and motivate them to push further? It's so much competition. How do you do it?
Oh, that feels like such a loaded question. Doesn't it? It's like,
I am loaded as
well,
a person.
I think so. This, when you work for yourself, I mean, I know you're all going to sympathize with this. Every quarter, I do what my husband calls the wobble. Like, it'll happen at some point where I go, oh, I've got no work booked in next quarter. Is this the year that I have to get a job? And he always reminds me that it's my 12th year. It always works out okay. But when you work project to project, like I have very little retainer work. It just suits my lifestyle better with my children. Um, the motivation to keep going, well, if I don't get paid, and then I don't pay my
Mhm.
mortgage and don't feed my children. So there's that. And I have had conversations recently with people that offer me work. They go, we could bring you in, Jill, and you could work in the company. And I'm not ready for that yet. Like, I'm not ready to give up what I get for working for myself, even though I know every quarter I have the wobble where I panic and worry, and then everything works out okay. So I think it's it's worth noting when you're starting out that you're not right for everybody, but you are the perfect match for a client where you offer them exactly what they need. And it's just making sure that you're consistent in your messaging, I guess, and who you're talking to. And that's something I learned a long time ago. You can't be too vague. You can't be, oh, I do training. Training what? For who? What companies? And when you start out, a lot of the stuff I did was service-based businesses, but I think it's because my background was hospitality and gyms and spa. It was service-based. So my network was service-based. So I got a lot of clients that were in those sectors. But it was when I started doing training and workshops that you would have maybe 30 people in the class, and I would get one or two from that class go, I get it, but I'm too busy and I don't want to do it. Can I pay you to do it for me? And that was the breaker for me to keep doing the workshops, because I would get leads from it. And it could be a workshop, it could be a podcast, it could be a regular local meetup that you go to. But I think you need to be consistent so that when the opportunity arises, you are prepared for that opportunity. But if you're too vague, then it's hard for people to recommend you. It's hard for people to refer you. And that's been the good bit for me, that, you know, like I don't do like CRO training, like, because I'm stronger where I sit. So
Right.
that's clear what I do and what I don't do, and who I work for.
And you
So
don't want to be everything to everyone. That's exactly
no,
what we talked about before we introduced you. Like when you're trying to do everything, it's kind of hard to for people to remember like what's your main strength, like why, you know, they came around to you in the first place. Yeah. I
So,
yeah,
Jill,
sorry.
how now we've been talking your brand all over the place, and you've had a chance to talk about your trainings. How can people, you know, get in touch with you about these trainings? Like for those who resonate and who want a piece of your brand, how do they do that now?
So I'm on LinkedIn, is probably the better social media platform. I'm a little bit of a lurker on
That's
social,
disturbing.
like,
Simo
'cause,
hates it.
yeah, well, I mean, I
But I
don't like Twitter.
understand it. Like it is, unfortunately, it is one of the better social media right now, and
Yeah,
that sells
Twitter's just
volumes about the quality of the playing
yeah,
field right
Twitter's
now.
gone down the hole, so I've stopped that.
Yeah.
My website's open, so the colouring in department. Yeah, so most people can contact me on there. There's not many Jill Quicks either, so I'm quite easy to find on the internet, which is quite handy. Um,
And you
yeah,
have
so
such a
that's
cool
the easy
name.
way. Yeah, I know. Well, do you know, it's actually still my maiden name, because me and my sister, our family line ended, and my granddad, before he died, he's like, "I'm so sad that there's no more Quicks," and I'm like, "No, no, I'm keeping it for work. Like, it's my
Oh, that's good.
work name." And he was like, "Oh, nice," and I was like, "Yeah." Like,
It's a
then I've got
very
my married
brand
name
name.
for like my private life.
I like it. It's a very like home brand. It's a strong name. Any
Also, when I got
conferences?
married, I'm like, I'm not rebranding. Like, people know me as Jill Quick. I'm not redoing this. I'm keeping it. So I kept it.
SEO has decided for you.
Yeah.
Where can people see you at conferences? Because I know conference season is back. I know you said you have something with Dana Di Tommaso this week. You said
19th of, I think it's the 19th. She's going to kill me if I get this date wrong. So I've got a webinar with her on, yeah, the 19th, 19th of March on LinkedIn Live. And then I'm doing a webinar with Web Trends Optimize, and that's on the 27th of March. And then that's it for the year so far. Like, people book you late though, don't they now? Things
They
used to be
do.
so far in advance, and now everything's like 6 to 8 weeks
last
out,
minute,
and then yeah.
and we don't
Always easy
like
for
it.
family people.
Exactly. Like it's so annoying. Well, thank you so much for coming over today to chat with us. We're like I'm very excited to hear that you do so much bespoke work before you actually do the training, because it matters so much to connect the dots. A lot of people that go to these trainings, I know from experience, do not have that analytics technical background. They just want to solve their business problem and do their jobs. So if
Yeah.
you're asking those questions, it's easier for them to like create in their mind the space where they should be clicking on a specific report or add a specific exploration. And I will drop all the links for people to get in touch with you in the description. And yeah, it was really really fun to get to know you better, and I hope
Yeah.
you'll
Thanks for
come
having
again so we can talk
me. Yeah.
about neurodivergency, because I am also ADHD, as you
Oh,
know. So I'm like,
man.
oh,
I'm
I like it.
I've had an official diagnosis of dyslexia. My dad had an autism diagnosis in his 40s. I'm
40s,
definitely
wow.
in his 40s. Yeah, I mean, it's all late, isn't it? Because they all just thought he was weird when he was younger, and then gave him antidepressants. And they're like, actually, we now have knowledge. And my son is ADHD, autistic, and dyslexia, so he just gobbled up all the genes as he went down. So
Same
yeah,
here, two
it's
autistic kids,
yeah,
so
I mean,
I
it's
get
one
it.
in five people, so it's like you're going to meet us. We're around, and
We're
I think there's
I
everywhere.
feel
people in our
out now
industry.
because I haven't been diagnosed yet with anything, but I'm sure there's
You
something wrong.
definitely have something, because you wouldn't
Yeah,
Yeah,
survive me in this podcast
yeah,
otherwise.
or not wrong, but I mean
it's all
something different,
about,
definitely. Yeah,
Something you
yeah.
must have.
I think for me, it's all about learning how to have those reasonable adjustments in your work life so that you can not have a meltdown. So yeah,
I'm still figuring that out. But again, thank you so much for your
thank you so
time.
much.
And
Talk to you
guys,
soon.
we will see you in the next episode.